Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Supportive Advice Live. This is Aquila Wheatley, your host, licensed marriage and family therapist. And we also have Mo, one of our panel members. And so we're gonna kind of start off as we typically do. If anybody has any questions, any concerns that they want to bring to the table, feel free to use the chat room or become a caller, and I'll be happy to answer any questions if you're going through anything in your life and you're looking for um, a therapeutic advice, coping strategies, or just a listening ear. That's what we're here for. So definitely don't be shy and make sure you press that call button. Um, Mo, how are you today?
I am doing good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you so much for joining again. For those who don't know, Mo is one of our panel. She definitely gives her insights, opinions, and she represents a voice different than my own, which I think is always important. Um, so I see we have John. John, thanks so much for joining. We also have Michael, and we have another listener as well. We do have another panel member. His name is Dante. We call him Mr. Machismo. We'll see if he joins us at any point during our show. So, with that being said, Mo, did you have anything that has come up in your week that you wanted to discuss before we go into the Am I the Asshole Reddit?
I'll say, let's see, this week, what has been challenging? I don't know, but all I can say is that transition has been totally something I've been experiencing for the last 2 years. This has been a lot of change from employment to things as in people, places, um, my beliefs, children, family space. And so I'm learning that I'm not sure what I'm learning in this season, but transition transition is a lot. I'll just say that
It is.
life life is life in
I was just gonna
right now.
say, it
So
sounds like it. It sounds like life is life, and I know you were doing some transition as it related to work hours, things like that. Um, how have you been coping with that? How have you been making room for yourself after taking on more hours?
so recently, so you guys, I'm used to a Monday through Friday from like 8 to 4, weekends off, holidays off. So this new position, I'm working on holidays. I'm working 16-hour shifts, or
Ooh.
some Sundays, or some Mondays I work a 24-hour shift. So people be like, "How do you work?" Yes, I work. If I go to work at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning, I do not get off till Monday, 8 a.m. That's 24 hours. So, working these hours, sometimes it's okay because I'm away from the house about 3 days out the week. And it allows me to have an extra day at home and to be home when my daughter gets out of school. And her schedule has changed and as well. So she's able to come home early and she only has to be at school a half a day. And so, it kind of helps me being at home. But however, working 16 and 24-hour days are a little different from working Monday through Friday. But yet, on the positive side, I do like that I get to, be at home or a little bit more throughout the week and during the day. So I don't know.
I think that it's also important to definitely look at quality of life. You know, when you are at home, what condition, what state are you in?
Um, it depends on the night. So another aspect about my job, I love helping people, but there's a lot of times that I am introduced to death. And so the hardest part of my job is when I hear a parent crying and they're holding their baby in their hand that they just gave birth to and their baby has died, or their baby is 7 years old and has leukemia and they're they died, and the mom and the husband and the brother and the sister are surrounding them in like three beds laying around this young baby who has passed for some kind of sickness. And so those days are the roughest for me. And sometimes I struggle with, I don't know if people believe in fillers, or you know I see things, and sometimes I even see those families later on, and they're on my mind and they're on my heart. Seeing a mom who was holding her baby, seeing a dad who didn't know what to do for the mom as she was holding her dead baby, that she thought she was taking home. Some are full born at 8 pounds, and some look like, three fingers together. So yeah, the whole, and then when you're talking about dealing with life, then you still have your at home family, you have
Right,
your
right.
friends, you have your whatever you believe in, your church, and dealing with all those different relationships. Sometimes it can be it can be overwhelming when people want to be petty about small stuff, or want to come with you with some BS. It's like, man,
So in
you know.
in what you do, it sounds like one of the most important aspects is establishing emotional boundaries. Because if not, then we lose the concept that things that are happening around us are not happening to us, right? And so I'm very curious as to how you have successfully set emotional boundaries when you're dealing with or experiencing vicariously these traumas.
Well, I find myself, before I'm a person who participates in a lot of things. I love community things. I love people, and I have had to step back from some things because um, have you ever had patience for people, and you have great patience, but then because of other things are going on, that your patience are now very thin, and so things that wouldn't bother you start to bother you.
That's
And
a
so I've been taking
I just wanted
a
to say
step
that's
back from
that's a
some things and some
sign
people.
that's a sign of a lack of emotional boundary. But yes, I do understand what you're saying. Um, so yeah, I mean, when you're wearing all of that on you, and then you leave that space, and then you have to actually deal with your immediate family and whatever their needs are. It can definitely make us feel overwhelmed, especially if we're also on top of that, being involved in community, whatever that might look like, where we're taking on additional roles. Um, I want to ask the question again. How are you making sure that you are creating at least some emotional boundaries at work?
So we do have a space for at work. So when I'm feeling some type of way and I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I'm not being paged, I do have a room. We can go to the room and I can relax. We do have on the top floor, on the rooftop there, you can see the city and you can see the lake, and that really helps me viewing the city and taking time to like meditate.
Mm-hmm.
um, what else I would do is I do have a counselor I see once a month, but I also have a coach that I talk to every. I say every other week. We used to talk every week, but I have slowed down on that, and I need to probably pick that back up.
Okay.
And I do have supports around me that I can speak to, but not everybody can really understand, or they don't even care. You know, like people who always give and always help others. Many times you don't have that same support you give others. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. In a lot of cases, what I find is that individuals in those scenarios may have to kind of take inventory of who they're surrounding themselves with. Are you surrounding yourself with people that are on your level, or people that can feed into you, or are you surrounding yourself with individuals who typically remain in need? And then once you take that inventory, really asking yourself, what purpose is this serving for me? Because if I'm doing it, it does serve a purpose, and finding out, kind of what that is. Do you have individuals that you feel like um, are can pour into you? I guess I'll say that.
Um, no, I don't have many. Nope, I don't have many. I don't have many as in an aspect either who understand things from the emotional side of things. Um, and dealing with grief, or dealing with people who deal with trauma all day. You know, most people who work in the public are, we get traumatized from the things of our jobs. Like all of my jobs have been, like I've been a juvenile correction officer. I've seen one of my partners get killed before.
Wow.
I've been a children and family service worker. You see kids that get abused, and
Yeah.
just really sad things. And so, I don't feel like we do have programs like the EAP and things like that, but I don't feel like they give first responders enough things to help take care of themselves. If you get what I'm saying. So sometimes I can do the massage, but why do I'm paying the same amount as everybody else to get a massage, and I'm dealing with about 100 deaths. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And I know self-care is on you. Self-care is on you. However, I think that many places don't give people what they really need. A EAP meeting once a month, or 12 sessions, or 10 sessions is not enough for those who are taking the time. And they say many people do not reach out and take the benefits that's offered to them, which is true as well. But some things I don't think should just be offered. It should be a requirement, as in those of us who work with the public, and even emotional health, or whatever your job may be.
Yeah, I will
Think about
say.
people in EMTs and firefighters and police officers and even teachers. They deal with a lot of stuff too.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
yeah
this
they do.
mother's classroom. Oh my God.
But
Oh, I couldn't deal with 30 kids in one room.
I will say, I do have clients in my private practice that have, EAP benefits. And one thing that I've noticed is that the number of sessions are typically very low,
Yeah.
and so I definitely agree with you that that benefit could definitely be better. I mean, now on the flip side, typically there is no out of pocket expense for the client. So I mean, that's great. But I think that there should be some level of renewal, or some petition of like extension, or something like that, for individuals, especially those that are first responders and who are experiencing vicarious trauma. Because as a mental health professional, one thing that I know to be true is that you do not have to experience trauma directly to be affected by it. And sometimes it's individuals that experience the trauma indirectly that are even more have even more symptoms of trauma than the person who actually went through it. Do you find that to be true in your circumstance?
Yes, in some scenarios, yes. Hmm.
When you are dealing with dealing with death and things of that nature, how do you decompress? Do you go through a grieving process, even though it may be an indirect relation?
Mm, yes. Now, I'll say for me, like seeing the babies, just to see the moms and the dad and babies being born and the screams after. Sometimes when I'm with them parents and them kids, the family, I'm crying right there with them. I'm still being professional, but I am human. Sometimes tears fall down my eyes. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Um, Sometimes I have to sit on the porch and I might sit there for hours and I have to listen to a worship song over and over again to assist me with what I saw, what I just seen and what I've experienced. And then sometimes you can see things later throughout the week. A great experience I can say one of my coworkers he was killed by one of the kids on the unit.
Oh my
And
goodness.
when I arrived there, I saw the vomit next to him. I saw the footprint on his head. His forehead was green. Many of us who responded to that incident, many of us had a lot of issues for a while.
I bet.
They didn't want to give us time off of work. Some people were having issues at home with their family members. People were saying that they still had they would have dreams about him, or they would see things, re-envision that whole scene. Some people quit their career. They was correction officers for 20 years and they went into a whole nother field. um, yeah, so there are things that you deal with after the fact. And then I also say, recently my father passed away. My
Yeah.
father died at the end of April. For some reason, it appeared when I felt stable, I would get a patient who just lost their dad. It was like that whole, right after my father died, like the whole month, it seemed like I had people who lost their dad all that month, or they lost a parent. And it was more of their dad than their moms. And so it would bring back something to me. It was bothering me. And not only that, my body started acting out internally. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Well, Lord, I'm going to see a counselor. I'm doing everything I can do in the natural, to make sure that I'm okay. But my body was still being affected or affected internally. You know what I'm saying? And so as I did some research, from grief and stress, it bothers you internally. And even
Yeah.
some of the patients that I saw, I noticed they had heart problems. But guess what? Died. The stomach issue. Guess what happened? Her son just was killed. And I was like, oh wow, I never really paid much attention until I went through the scenario myself of losing somebody, and my body start acting out from the grief. So
And when we
I
talked
knew
about
stress could do something, but I didn't know grief was so large as in messing with you internally.
And when we talked about the loss of your father, which we discussed this on a previous episode, if anyone is interested in hearing that show, you can definitely look it up on uh, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. Um, but when we talked about that, we discussed repressing, right? And kind of just having an attitude where we just want to get through, or we want to go, go to the other side. We we're not really always giving ourselves the time to grieve, to mourn, understanding that grief is not linear. It is a cycle, and it has parts and pieces that you can experience in tandem. And even though things get easier, with time, that loss never disappears. And sometimes some of those internal manifestations are often because we're not allowing ourselves to grieve. We're actually kind of pressing it down and not allowing ourselves to express and experience complicated grief.
And when you talk about, that's a great topic. You said complicated grief. So
Mm-hmm.
many people, we think about just death, but as I was sharing about transition, there are things that are changing in my ministry. So I was like, oh, I'm not even realizing I'm grieving my ministry because things have changed in the place where I'm at. And when one thing looked one way for so many years and it changed, you have to adapt and change to the new things, the new people, the new environment,
Mm-hmm.
the new projects. And you don't even realize that you're grieving once was old, what was old. And you were so happy to get the new. You get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Um, Grieving your relationship with your children. My daughter, again, we talked about this before. She's a teenager, and so she's at the point, she doesn't need mommy as much, and she's getting older, and I have to come to a realization in a minute she may be out of my house. It's like, yay, but it's also a sad time too. um
Absolutely.
Transitions. um
I want to touch on what you just said. You said that often we are so focused on the excitement of the new, right? We don't realize that a part of us is still grieving the loss of what was. And I think that when it comes to transition, that is an amazing point to bring about, because sometimes we'll get in a position and we're like, okay, well, I should feel happier about this. Why am I not feeling as excited, or why did my excitement end so abruptly? And I think that a lot of times it's because individuals that are in transition don't realize that there is a part of them that is mourning the goodbye that has to happen to get to that next hello.
that's, yeah, that's so good right there.
In what ways is your ministry transitioning, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, Jesus. um Okay, so when I say as a ministry, I know this is not a show, as in, we just have conversation. But anyway, for my belief and what I believe in, I believe in Jesus Christ. God has been showing me different things, and He is opening up new opportunities for me, new places, and He is showing me where I am currently at. It's time for me to uh, go forth and let my wings spread, right?
Okay.
And so part of the sadness is that, you know, I've learned so much from a place, and I still learn from a place. And the teaching is great. The teaching is wonderful. And so as it's time for me to go to the new place, um, I still would get good teaching, but it will no longer be the same. Like when you talk about transition, one minute you happy for the new, but when you get
Mm-hmm.
to the new, there's different challenges and different things you have to look at and that you have to um, deal with because that's your new assignment.
Now,
If that
just
makes sense, I hope I'm making sense.
well, just a
And
question.
so,
Just
mhm.
a question, real quick. You're describing a scenario where in taking on something new, you have to release something that sounds like it's still giving, like it's still fundamental. Um,
Mhm.
is it like out of necessity that you have to let one go to to I don't want to say take advantage. That's not what I want to. But to pursue the new. In this case, do you have to let
Mhm.
go of something that's still serving you?
I feel like great question. Sometimes I feel as though, depending on the situation and scenario,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes yes, you have to let go of something that's serving you. You can't be fully committed to something that's serving you. How can I say this? I don't have to let go totally, but I also feel that in order to be in a new place, you do have to let go of some things, and you cannot be fully committed to getting what you're used to getting because you're in a new place. I don't know how else to explain it. Have you ever heard of, they say how can you ever embrace the new when you won't let go of the old?
Um, I haven't heard of it specifically like that, but I do get the concept of, if you're still holding on to something, how can you grab hold of something new? I do get that concept. However, some things are not always black and white. We live in a world of gray, you know,
True.
and so unless it's a situation in which it's being required that you make a choice, I'm curious as to why you are requiring yourself to do so.
um I wouldn't say it's a requirement for myself. Like I said, my belief. Sometimes God will have you remove yourself from a place, a person, and a thing, and you may not understand it. And this thing could be so good to you at one point, and it still can be good to you now in some way. But if God is telling you or pulling you to come away from a thing and to go in another direction, I can't. I don't know. It's something that you follow. Um, I
Okay,
don't know
so
how else to
so what I'm
explain
hearing you
that.
say is it's outside of you. You see this opportunity, this change, this transition as something that is outside of you. It is
Yeah.
something that you feel like you're being guided towards. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And from that aspect, then yeah, it definitely makes sense if it is being if you're being guided in a way where there is no room for there is no room to pursue both options, then I mean that makes absolute sense. It just kind of depends, but I always want to kind of bring up the gray, that we live in, because a lot of times people, will look at different options and they'll look at it from a very um, black and white perspective, and they'll put themselves in positions where they're pulled to make choices that sometimes don't need to be made. Sometimes will either make themselves in time, or sometimes don't need to be made at all. But it sounds like in this case, you feel very strongly that you're being guided outside of a place into a new space, and so in
And
that, I congratulate you.
then think about this too. Okay, you right. You have really great points. Um, then think about this in another aspect. So maybe you would like to hold on and stay connected to a place, but the people that you're surrounded by, for whatever reason, it could be pride, it could be insecurity, it
Mm-hmm.
could be territorial things. But immaturity. It could be several things. You still would want to be connected with them, or
Mhm.
still have relationship with them, but they can't handle that you having uh you in another environment, or that you dedicated to another place now. Many times, sometimes the people around us, they're not mature. Their insecurities will have them feeling some kind of way about you because you decided to move to the next thing. You get what I'm saying? And they
Yeah.
even may know that you're being guided, but for whatever reason it is for them, because each person is different, because of their insecurity, because they're immature, because of pride, whatever it may be, um, they have a hard time accepting that you're leaving a place and going to a new place, or they have you say, for instance, like a child in the parent. We got Michael in here, okay, right?
Mhm.
So you could see a person who has been with Michael for a long time, and then when new people come, they start acting different, or you could tell they're insecure about something, and so they feel like they no longer matter anymore, because now he's dealing with the new people, and they feel like they don't have a place anymore. Do you get what I'm saying? And that's not the
Absolutely.
case. He That's not the case. He wants to help everybody,
Okay.
but because of that person's immature, I don't want to just say immature, but because of their perspective, or their negative thinking, or their childhood, or um insecurities, whatever it may be. You know all the words. You the specialist. But people will
Okay.
start acting funny. You get what I'm saying? People start acting funny, and they can blame him for a certain thing versus not realizing it's them and their mindset and their behavior about this situation.
So I want to take a moment, and I want to thank John for staying with us as long as he had. We appreciate you listening. I also want to welcome Amanda, who's just recently joined. We appreciate you joining. Um, Dante, Mr. Machismo, has also joined. He's another one of our panel members. Just wanted to make sure that we introduced him. But to get back to what you were saying, Mo, it indirectly, it really sounds as though you are being put in a position to make a choice, because if there is, or yeah, or being required to choose one thing over another, which is one of the questions that I had asked. Because if there's friction around you not making a choice, essentially, even if it's passive aggressively, um, there is a requirement to make a choice. If there's comments, if there's issues, if there's questions, if there's pushback on you exploring other options, then at that point, it's very clear that there is a level of possessiveness that this individual may be experiencing with you, which essentially requires you to make a choice.
Well, I don't want to say you hit the nail. You hit it on the nail, as in their behavior. But um if I make a choice and you don't agree with it, that's on you. You know what I'm saying? If I make a choice and you can't accept it, that's on you.
Yeah.
And so there is freedom. Me and you are freedom people. And so the choice that I make, I'm going to be free in it. And sometimes, when you speak your mind, people don't like that. When you walk with your head held high, some people don't like that. If you say what you mean and you mean what you say, oh, you arrogant. Um, and I don't know. So, you know, but the example that I gave in that, yes, some people can be possessive, and some people can it can be some insecurity within them. But because of their choice, that doesn't mean that I have to make a choice off of what they feel. But if it is what it is, as in you can't accept me doing one thing here and in another place, then it is what it is. That's you. Um, I don't know.
So what I'm hearing you say is, and I also wanted to take a moment to welcome Vincent. Thank you so much for joining. We very much appreciate you. Um, what I am hearing you say is that you don't feel pressured to make a choice necessarily, but you are able to acknowledge that some of the insecurity might be coming out in a possessive nature. Um,
Hmm.
and so, but you're absolutely right. If that is not, if that doesn't push you organically, you know, um, then at that point, I guess, then it's not, it's not whatever methods they're using is not necessarily effective in getting you to make a decision. A lot of times, what will happen is when there is contention, when there is a level of possessiveness, but the expectation is not made verbal, the tension, the questions, the issues, the attitude, even, from an emotional standpoint, when you're around them, the feeling that you get, if it is at all negative, kind of pushes us in a direction, inadvertently. Do you believe that that's something that you're experiencing, or is that kind of not where you are?
Um, I'm I'm not there as in allowing people to uh, sway me one way or another, as in what God told me and where I'm guided to go and do. Um,
Okay.
like I'll give you an example with this. The other day, someone made a post on Facebook about would you post your significant other on Facebook, and a lady was like, "No, I don't think we need to, because if we're not married or blah blah blah." Then no, and another person said, "Yeah, I can do what I want. I post all the time," and the guy called her silly for posting your business all the time, and I think that's just stupid. And I told him, like, I don't think it's fair. As a society, we like to push our own thoughts on other people, as in if what they do is wrong or right. If she likes to post 150 times and she's comfortable with it, that's her business. Why do you need to label her as calling her stupid? And you get what I'm saying? Why do you need to? Because you're uncomfortable and you don't like to share things. That's what you choose to do, and that's what she chooses to do. Why do you have to label and call her a name about what she's free to do and what she's comfortable to do? I Why does it bother you that much?
And I do agree. As a society, um, there is a typical sway. You know, um, Either someone is completely in agreement with you, or a lot of times they're in complete opposition. And then there's a lot of times also where there's some gray, and somebody will look at a post and continue to scroll. You know, it sounds like in that scenario something was triggered in him. You know, and it definitely could have had something to do with the fact that he doesn't like the post, and if I was to go out on a limb, maybe he has been around some ladies, that has wanted him to post, and maybe that has negatively affected some of his relationships, or all it takes is one. And so you see that projection going towards the person who's posting. A lot of times when you see behavior like that, it's not about the person who's posting. It's about personal scenarios, things that someone has gone through, and whatever's being posted triggering that within them. But I did want to give Dante a chance to introduce himself. Hey, Mr. Machismo, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How's everybody doing? I feel like I came in on something heavy, and I feel like I missed something. Oh man,
That's what happens when we're late. No, I'm kidding.
I knew it was coming. I'm gonna take my lumps. I'm gonna ball up on the ground and just take them.
No, but
Dante tapping his feet because he need to know what's going on.
yeah, well, we were talking about transition actually, um, and we were talking about organic transition, as opposed to a transition in which we might be externally swayed. And so I'm interested and we have some listeners, so we definitely want to make sure we appreciate them. We have John with us, we have Michael, Amanda, we have Vincent as well. And so we appreciate all of you for listening. I did want to ask you, and if you all want to contribute, I just want to let you know, you can definitely press that call button, and we do take live callers. It's just that type of show, right? But Dante, I did want to ask you, what is your view, on transition, and what transitions do you find yourself in at the moment? Hey, Colonel, I see that you dropped in. We always love to see you.
Now you say currently.
No, I was talking to Carnal. I saw that he had kind of jumped
Oh,
on as well. I wanted to make sure I acknowledged him. But I was saying for you, what type of transitions have you been going through as of late?
mm, that's a good question. I'm kind of bored. Pretty much right now I'm in a posture of waiting, where I'm working
Mm.
towards certain goals that uh pretty much I just have to kind of be like Bill Murray in the movie Groundhog's Day, kind of live the same day for a while and, and stay in that posture until it's time to make a move in a certain direction. So I think the biggest transition for me right now, it has been staying still, because your
Mm.
natural innate uh especially just as a human being, you are taught move, 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 be busy, do. And if you're not doing it, it's considered a negative thing. You could be considered stagnant. You could be considered someone that is, it's a term you might be abreast to, having arrested development, where
Oh
you're
yeah.
stuck in a phase of your life, or stuck in this or there. But there's also situations where, if there is a plan in place, that staying still and following the course of the plan is the best course of action. It is actually making the most movement you can make. So that is the hardest part, understanding that and sticking with that. Because there's a lot of things where, okay, well, this looks good. I could do this. I could throw some money in, invest in this, or I could do this, instead of just sitting still waiting on XYZ, say for example your credit score to raise, waiting on, okay, opportunities for this to come available, and just sitting still and waiting for the right opportunity, as opposed to just doing too much, or being out of posture and moving in a direction that ain't necessarily for the good. It looked good on the outside, but the
Right.
long term effects could be way worse than if you just sat down somewhere. That is the hardest part.
I
That for sure.
I want to say that I 100% agree with you. Um, the part of transition when you are waiting, when you are in limbo, and I want to also say hi to, oh well, I think we um, open and talk. Oh, okay. So I wanted to say hi to Java. Thank you for joining us, as well as Johnny. I appreciate you joining us as well. But yeah, that place of being in limbo um, can be very tough. It can be very tough because um, there's a place where there's contentment, but then there's a place where there is anxiety, and then you're like, well, did I miss it? Did I was there an opportunity I didn't see? Didn't see it? Did I move when I wasn't supposed to move? Did I not move when I was supposed to move? And then we see a lot of questions in that, and a lot of anxiety in that. And I think you also brought up a good point of societal views. If you have not reached X, Y, and Z estate, um, you are considered in arrested development, and that can be tough, because as human beings we need that autonomy to move at our own speed. But I think that you brought up such an amazing point. Um, I see, Cardinal. I wanted to make sure that you're aware that I do see you in the chat. Um, oh, okay. So it sounds like you are going through a scenario. Um, it looks like there's some court involvement. Um, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I'm sorry to hear that. Um, Definitely sorry to hear that you're going through that, and I know that it can be even more frustrating not understanding why. If anybody is curious as to what I'm responding to, Cardinal made a chat. He said my POS lawyer emailed me and basically dropped a rule, NISI notification for contempt. No idea why. And so I wanted to acknowledge that, and say that I'm sorry to hear that. And I understand that that can be something really frustrating, especially if you don't know what you did for that to happen. Um, back to the Dante. When you are in a place of transition such as this, um, how do you stop yourself from becoming overeager? What are some coping strategies that you use to be able to maintain patience in that time?
I kind of focus on the end goal. And of course, I would suggest this for everybody. Sometimes just sitting and of course praying, but just sitting and recapping the steps of the plan can help. Okay, so I'm doing this because I have a plan of doing this. So I'm in this process in this step. So next we'll be doing this, then we'll be doing this, and so on. And sometimes that'll calm you down and really just kind of put things in perspective. But one big thing that I will definitely say, you got to cut out all outside noises that is not adjacent with your goals. There's going to be a lot of voices that come into play. And if they ain't talking what you talking, you ain't really got no reason to be talking to them. And that's it. That's all. It's real cut and dry. And we want to be people that are open, and there's a place for that. There's a on a level you can be open to everyone's suggestions. However, put that just as that, a suggestion,
Right.
meaning it does not make what you're doing, or it does not necessarily come into play or change anything that you're doing. It doesn't do anything except just give you a little bit broader perspective, but you're still entrenched in what you're doing so deep. You believe so deeply in where you're going, that all of that is just general conversation. And a lot of times it's just to be nice, because I mean their perspective is welcomed, but it's not necessarily necessary. But it's definitely welcome. But that's the thing, and also it's like in society people get offended if you do not buy into what they're selling,
Yeah.
or agree with their frame of reference, or agree with their perspective. You can respectfully disagree and have mutual respect, but people are not looking to necessarily have that thing when it comes to communication. People want to kind of have you lean in their direction, which I mean that's fine if that's what you're into, but The honest thing is that this ain't it. This ain't the exit for that.
It's gonna
So
say
there's
this.
that. This ain't that.
So
But that's I mean,
I am curious because there's a different there's different types of waiting or limbo or what have you. There is the I did a step in the process and now I've handed the baton over to someone else who now must do a step, and then they hand that baton over to me, and so I'm being still in that aspect. Sometimes it can be, oh well, I'm not able to do this, or I'm not allowed to do this next part until a year from now, and so I have to wait that year before I can pursue this next part. And sometimes it's a lack of availability. Help me understand better and in more detail what this waiting is in regards to, and how does it correspond with your current goals?
well, to kind of bring you into my world here.
Okay.
Yeah, well, but anyway,
Thank you.
I don't know why that elbow song came in, but anyway, definitely. I'm just simply waiting on my credit score to shoot up a little bit so I can start buying properties.
Okay.
But there's opportunities out there where I could be a part of a purchasing group. I could do this, I could do that, but that ain't necessarily the plan. That's not what we trying to do. All connections ain't necessarily good connections. So we just gonna trust the process. In my Philadelphia 76ers voice, we're gonna trust the which I mean to give a little back. I don't know if there's any NBA fans, but they intentionally tanked in the NBA and got high draft picks to acquire a few players on a team so they could get better, and they kind of did. I mean, with Embiid, it got he's a beast, but anywho, they trust the
We
process. Where
digress.
okay, yeah, I digress. Yeah, there we go. But anywho, yes, sometimes everything that glitter ain't necessarily gold. So
Very
yeah,
true.
it's good to get involved with somebody that has a little bit more purchasing power, or a group that has you put your capital in, you get a little residual. So that's great. But however, you don't necessarily want to cut off your face to spite your nose, where that same capital could be used to get a little bit bigger return and kind of less hands in the pot type of thing, and really be in a position to kind of do more if you just wait a little bit longer. I think of the scenario, why run down and grab one when you can walk down and grab them all, and that's kind of that's where we're at with it.
I like that. Where did that come from? Why run down and grab one if you can walk down and grab them all?
I heard that a lot of places. That's a good question. I want to go. I will circa '97 maybe. I might have started first hearing that maybe. I don't know. Let me get back to you on that. That's been around for a while. That
Okay.
I got a whole bunch of old people sayings, as a seasoned people sayings.
Season.
Let me
Thank
say it.
you. Thank you.
Seasoned people say, I had to correct myself, but I have a plethora of that.
We're not spring chickens ourselves.
Man, he acted crazy. He must be trying to get his back dirty.
Wow.
Oh,
I am going to kind of go back around and find the point that we started on. And so, in that, what I'm hearing you say is that you are not wanting to make hasty decisions. It sounds like in making hasty decisions, there might be a win in the short term, but possible losses in the long term. And so it sounds like you are forward thinking, and so you're not just looking at short term goal, but essentially end game. and what you're looking to accomplish, which is also a great part of transitioning is knowing the goals that you're trying to accomplish, and then figuring out what transportation you're going to need to get there, how, when, and what way.
Instant gratification destroys the nation.
Lord, what?
I don't know. I couldn't help my hack. But no, yeah. Oh, you liked it that one, huh, Bo? Yeah. that was free. That was free. That was on the house.
I wouldn't pay
It,
for it, but I enjoyed
Colonel
it.
That
said,
was on the
"Ignorance
house.
and peace, independence." Did you hear that? Colonel said, "Ignorance and peace, independence." That's a good one too.
That is true.
Oh my
That
goodness,
is true.
we have fell in a hole.
Ah, ah.
When you're in deep water, people think the more effort you exert, the quicker that you'll escape the situation. But essentially, it's coasting, calming down and coasting. That does it. And I say that to say I'm not gonna keep fighting this current. I will go where it takes me. Okay, I will
Ride
go
the
where it
wave.
takes me for sure, for sure. Proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. That's like a little bit of a tongue twister there. Say that seven
I've heard
times.
that before.
Goodness
That's a
gracious.
good one.
Proper
That's a
prior planning prevents piss poor performance. All right. Hey, Brian.
that is a wonderful one. That is classic.
So I did want to give the opportunity for the anyone calling, anyone listening, if you had any questions as it relates to transition, or you had any experiences that you were going through that you wanted to share. I just wanted to, kind of remind you that we are taking callers, and you can feel free. If not, that's absolutely fine because we're actually going to be wrapping up soon. Also, please be reminded that you can always catch our replays on Supportive Advice Live via Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. We're also live on Supportive Advice, YouTube, and and Facebook. So a lot of avenues. If you missed anything, John, I want to thank you so much. You've been here since the beginning of this show, and we appreciate you staying on for the long call. Vincent, Cardinal, Brian, thank you so much for joining as well. Cardinal, you are. I feel like you're a regular listener now, and I want to let you know that I definitely appreciate that. I appreciate you. Um, Please don't forget to subscribe. That way you'll know when we're on, which is typically on Thursdays at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, I thank everyone for joining. I really appreciate you, and I hope to see everyone again next Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Thank you so much for your time, and see you then.